Hello and welcome to the Green Heart Wellbeing Podcast. This is episode 7 and today we're going to be talking about you asked, I answer. So basically what I've been doing is collecting comments and thoughts and snippets of conversations that I've had with friends, particularly about a lot of the themes that we've talked about in the last 6 episodes, and also some of the messages that I've had on like Instagram or LinkedIn and just various platforms around the episodes. So I've collected them all, including some of the things that I've had in conversation with friends, to make this episode. So I've shared a lot in the last few episodes about like life after teaching. If you go back to the older episodes that are the diary of an ex-teacher, they're kind of more in real time, like when I handed in my notice and the different things that were going on. But now the episodes are all based around life after teaching, founder struggles, running a business, living in Dubai, and of course, well-being in schools. So today I'm just going to chat about some of the questions and thoughts and comments that have kind of popped up over the last few weeks. So one of the main ones is around knowing when it's time to leave. Someone had messaged me and said, a lot of what you shared in episode 4 resonated, but how do you actually know if it's time to leave teaching? And again, it's a really personal choice, so if you think about back to the days when you were thinking about what you wanted to be when you grew up, it's like we all still, teachers speak to children about that, career day, or what do you think you'd like to be when you grow up and stuff like that. But there was a time where you would have been thinking about it, whether you went to uni or went to work in an industry or office, shop, whatever it is. There would have been a time where you thought about what you were going to do and how you would get there. So that was the kind of inner voice and the decision. It might have been circumstance. You might have felt it was kind of out with your control at some point, or you might have fell into something. But again, I think, like I was saying, it's a really personal decision. So you might have had the niggles about leaving teaching, or thinking that it's definitely something that you want to do, is explore a new career, but you're like, I don't know even where to start. So again, it's like that inner voice, your gut feeling, your intuition starting to maybe be more frequent. Sometimes that'll be a sign that it might be time to leave teaching for you. Also, build up signs like burnout, joy fading, misalignment and values with the place that you're working. It might just be maybe a change of school, or if you're an expat, maybe a change of country, or maybe to return home. Journaling can help with that. It's like, I think I've mentioned it before, one of my friends once suggested, or actually one of my coaches, who's now a friend, had suggested about morning pages. So as soon as you get up, before you do anything else, you sit down and just pour out your mind onto the paper. So it could be a tumble of words. And then I read about it in the book The Artist's Way, and the author, can't remember her name, also suggests this about the morning pages. And if you can't think of anything to write, then you write, I can't think of anything to write, I can't think of anything to write, over and over again for like the 3 pages. So I think when you're thinking about, is it time to leave? How do I know? How do I know if it's time to leave? Or how do I know what I want to do next? Because you might not want to leave teaching, you might want to stay there. And I'm always cautious to signpost that, as in I'm not trying to get everyone to leave teaching, but it's just more around personal choices about what gives you meaning and engagement in life. So journaling can help. And then there's a question here that I've written down: what would life look like in a year if nothing changed? And that's something I think I put in that episode as well. So it's a really personal choice is the answer to that one. You'll know, it's like, there was a quote, and I feel like it might have been Tony Robbins, something around I'm never going to say it right. If I find it, I'll type it in the show notes, but it was something around the discomfort becomes so unbearable that change has to happen. That's going to annoy me now. I'll be thinking about that for ages until I remember it, but it was around that. Okay, the second comment that I wanted to talk about was, it mentions episode 2, and this person was saying, I've been thinking about leaving for years, but I'm terrified I'll lose that part of my identity. Teaching feels like all I am. And I think I talked about this in that episode. Like, that was a huge, but Miss Green was like the clothes that I wore in the morning, except they were just on all the time. Like, it became such a huge part of who I was, like this version of me, that it was really a big change when that was no longer, the day-to-day experience I was having. So when this person has said teaching feels all I am right now, I'm like, also what a great thing to be. And this is, again, back to the amount of skills that I believe people in education have, and you've got skills upon skills that you never trained for, that you don't know you're even doing them half the time, because it's just such a huge role with so many moving parts to it that you can't help but learn things about yourself and about people and relationships and admin and technology and conversations. Like, the list goes on and on. So if you think about like the empathy, adaptability, communication, and there's so many things. And of course, like, you train as a teacher in order to deliver lessons and support attainment and progress, and you use pedagogy and all these things. But I don't remember being trained in personal or relationship building with teammates or kids. Like, this is all stuff that you only learn on the job, and of course a lot of it deepens with experience. And we're all so different, we're so many constellations of so many different skills. So you might have learned that one you might be particularly good at. Like, I always remember years ago, one of the things I always wanted to improve was my questioning, how I questioned within lessons. But now my whole job in terms of coaching is about questions, and the right questions in the right time. So it's still something that I develop, but now I'd say it probably is more so a strength than it would have been before. So I think there's maybe a little bit, again, journaling, I keep saying that, or a thinking point about, okay, if I wasn't a teacher, or I wasn't working in education, and just could like blank that bit out for this thinking exercise, what do I already know about me out with that? Who am I? And I've written a story about this before. It's called the Swami story, kind of based on the time I was in India, and I can connect that in here somewhere, or if you're on YouTube, there's like a read it somewhere in one of the videos. But it's like almost this collection of like labels, so if you didn't have a specific country or that you were born in, or if you didn't have I don't know, a specific passport or religion, or all these different labels like teacher, or I don't know if I'm explaining this properly, but all the different parts that make us who we are. And this is probably more a philosophical way of thinking again, but it's like, take away those labels. I think about my dad, who drove taxis for years and years, and that is like a huge part of his identity. But when he retires, he often talks about the work that he did and stories from that time, because it shaped a lot of who he was. But then it's the same, if you take that away, like, what parts of you are you proud of? What parts of who you are, your makeup, your personality? And then in this situation, thinking about the identity shift, if you were to leave or change career, what parts would you take with you, and what parts would you leave behind? So yeah, that's an interesting one to think about. Now this one was more in a conversation with a friend, and it was around like teaching, people who are staying and teaching and feel like at the moment that's the choice that they've made. They don't want to leave, they're happy, but their well-being isn't great, or they're, you know, starting to head towards feeling a bit burnt out or exhausted or whatever. And the conversation was around how do teachers stay well? Like, how can you protect your well-being as someone that works in education? So I know I've mentioned this before. I'm always really cautious that I repeat myself. I don't want to just become like a broken record. But I also have a YouTube video around the findings from my master's research that was into teacher wellbeing, because at the time I spoke to a group of teachers who had self-reported as flourishing as a teacher within their career. So it was interesting to think about that, and again, you can listen to that episode to hear more about like what the findings were, because I was like, I want to know how you're flourishing so I can flourish as well because I'm not, kind of thing. But yeah, like, of course it's possible to look after your own well-being really effectively within education. And if you're one of those people, like, please get in touch and tell us how you do that and share that information. But I guess it'd be some protective measures for yourself and preventative measures for yourself around boundaries. And again, there are obviously external factors that contribute without, and this is what had come up in my research as well, was like support of leadership. So leadership that really walk the walk around well-being, you know, so they model different ways that they protect their own well-being, and staff will often follow. And self-care practices. So this is something I always talk about with staff and workshops. It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, like having a massage or going to get your nails done. Those things are really nice and relaxing and things like that, but I guess I'm talking more about the psychological well-being. So finding self-care practices that really support that. And for some people it will be things like consistent meditation practice. For other people, you know, there'll be professional boundaries, like no school notifications on a personal phone, things like that. I've still not succumbed to having like an Apple Watch yet, because I just, even when I had like a Fitbit and working at the school, I never connected messages, because I just felt like technology and being so accessible was getting more, like encroaching more onto like my very person. So I understand that people who are parents and stuff like that might, you know, in case a message comes through from like a nanny or a caretaker or the nursery or something like that. But again, it's all personal to you. So there are systemic challenges. We've talked a lot about that in one of the previous, I think the last episode. For some people, leaving that career will be a healthier choice. But again, like I'm saying, there's so many people that work within education who do have strong boundaries, supportive leadership, really strong self-care practices, and do feel really well within their career. So yeah. It's actually really nice to think about like the founders' struggles and imposter syndrome. I've kind of bunched these in together, because I was speaking with someone recently who's also launched their own kind of company, and quite a few women actually who are all kind of doing the same thing. And we were talking about how it can be quite isolating and quite lonely, you know. And I was saying, especially because I've decided to do this by myself without a partner, a business partner. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I just need someone to A, hold me accountable, but B, you know, bounce ideas off. So we were thinking about that, and this is when we got to talking about, I feel the same in mine, and I was speaking with someone else about how do you not give up, like how do you just keep going. And I think the last few weeks for me have probably been the hardest, and it's interesting though, I've never said or never felt like given up with Green Heart Wellbeing yet. It's like I've not got to that stage yet. And I don't know if that's because personally I'm a kind of slow burner with most things. It takes me ages to do anything. But when I do, I'm quite determined to kind of keep going, and just, even if some of the time is literally one small step in front of the other and plodding on, I haven't ever got to the point where I feel like giving up yet, because there's still this really like innate belief that what I'm doing is the right thing for me to be doing right now. And of course there's going to be hard times financially, time-wise, all sorts of things, but without them I'm not going to be able to really appreciate and experience the true high points. So I know I've got to get through them. So I guess the answer to that is, how do we not give up? It's like belief. It's believing in what you're doing, believing that what you are offering is needed, and it's for the collective, and it'll be for the greater good. It's bigger than myself. So of course I want to earn money and want the business to be successful, but the bigger and more successful the business comes, the more people then I can support in different ways with like pro bono work or community work. So, you know, it's, yeah, I think that's for me why I haven't got to the point of giving up yet, is because I still really believe in what I'm doing. So what have I written here about, again, journaling? You can tell I've been doing a lot of journaling recently. And reconnecting with your why. So I think if I ever got to the point where I was like, right, Ashley, you're going to need to start thinking about how else to manage this, or if it's really worth this time that you're putting in. Speaking with someone else that was saying, is the juice worth the squeeze? So yeah, I think connecting back with your why, and maybe actually reaching out to the people that you've worked with. And you know, sometimes this can be difficult to do, and someone actually said to me the other day, can I write a testimonial for you? Like, is that something that you would use? And I'm like, oh yeah, that would be lovely, thanks, I'd really like that. So it's maybe being a bit more brave about asking for those things, and maybe asking for a bit of feedback, because when you do hear the positive things about how you've supported a child, or how you've made a difference, or whatever it is, your business or thing that you're thinking about, you know, school, teaching, parenthood, like whatever it is, thinking about asking the community that you work within, what could be improved, or has this been supportive for you? And taking that feedback and taking it to heart and using it, and realizing that you know, you might have made a difference. So yeah, touching on imposter syndrome again, there was something, I can't remember if I said this before, but speaking with someone, we mentioned this, and it's like changing it from why me to why not me. You know, like when you've got imposter syndrome around, say, starting a company, it's like, oh, why did I think I could do this? Who did I think I am? But then it's like the flip side as well. Why can't you do it? Why wouldn't you be able to do it? Of course you can, you know. So that was the imposter syndrome part. Right, the last one, well-being in schools, what it isn't v what it is. And this person had wrote in and said, I completely agreed about cupcakes and token gestures, but then what does good well-being in schools actually look like? So I think when you listen to that episode, there is a lot of like what it isn't, but I guess that's, you know, the title to catch you in to the episode. But we talked a lot in there about what it does look like, just really briefly. So best practice within well-being, within education, it's embedded, it's not occasional, it's not a one-off day. Of course there will be like one-off days as part of the overall well-being ecosystem to really boost awareness and bring well-being to the forefront. But again, the idea is those things continue throughout the rest of the year. Strategy, which again was something that one of the leaders that I worked with before when I was in the school absolutely loved strategy, and it was like a kind of new thing for me. I'd never really understood it, or you know, thought about it as and applied to what I'm doing. Of course we all work within strategies, and when you're planning lessons there's a strategy and stuff like that, but I'd never really knew much about strategy in terms of like an overall provision within an organisation. So now I'd say that I know a lot more than I did then. But again, thinking about the strategy when implementing like a wellbeing system within a school, there's got to be a kind of long-term vision, a mid-term, and then short-term, and like steps to reach that. Teacher voice is really important, consistency, leadership modelling, which I've mentioned before, some sort of measurement, which I've touched on before. After speaking with a few schools this last week, I visited 3 new schools, which was so nice, and again, we talked a lot about the measurement tools that they maybe already use and how we can adapt them to perhaps introduce and use that data in alignment with the curriculum that I was talking to them about to offer to the school. And CPD, so if you're working in education and listening to this, like I know, and I've done it myself, where I've led a wellbeing session on a Wednesday afternoon at 3:30 to 4:30. Everybody's exhausted, they want to go home, they've got 25 books to mark for maths, and it's just like sometimes it doesn't connect with the real experience that people are having. So I think the CPD needs to be meaningful around well-being and actually has value and be useful to really impact the staff well-being. So yeah, that was the main thing. Oh yeah, and I suppose this is again like a plug, like I'm talking about being brave. That's the whole idea around the club part of Green Heart Wellbeing. So to add to the practices, the wellbeing practices that are in school, there are other clubs, the teachers all run clubs, the outside providers might have like gymnastics and whatever, but to have specific positive psychology, positive education, wellbeing skills within these clubs is a way that it can be embedded throughout or introduced to the community for the children effectively. So those ripple effects, the things that they learn, will be connected to a real, whether implicit or explicit well-being school. So yeah, just to kind of finish off, it was nice to collate comments and thoughts and conversations and bring them all into one episode. So thank you if you're one of the people that I've been chatting to recently, friends or whoever, and then again the people that will reply to like the newsletter or on socials, LinkedIn. So thanks for your comments, because it's actually nice for me to make an episode like this reflecting on the things that we've talked about so far, and it's actually given me some ideas for the next few episodes as well. So thanks so much for that. Definitely get in touch if you haven't done already, if you're thinking about it, or even if you've got any episode suggestions. So thank you so much, and I'm glad that you're here to listen, and see you next time.